Today we'll be taking a quick look at Amplify Studio, which is part of the AWS Amplify framework. As part of the setup, you can see I've already created a new Amplify app and enabled Amplify Studio. So let's launch into Studio here. And you can see the different options down the side here that we have, from the UI to data, authentication, storage functions, and so on. But first we'll take a look at data. On the data modeling tab, you can see I have two tables defined, user and post. Let's say we want to add a field to user, so we just click add a field, and let's add the birthday, and then we select the type as AWS date, and that's all we need to do to add a field. Below, you can see the relationship between user and post. So user is related to posts, and one user has many posts. And the opposing side of that, on post, the author of the post is related to user, and this post belongs to that user. Adding fields and relationships in the visual editor automatically updates the underlying GraphQL schema. So if we switch over to there, we can see the birthday field defined as an AWS date on the user model. So if we switch back to the visual editor and add a new field on user, let's say city, we'll keep it a string. You can see that it's been automatically added to the GraphQL. So now all we need to do is hit save and deploy, and that will update our Amplify schema and GraphQL API. And then we'll just hit deploy and let that run. Okay, we are back after our backend has deployed, and I'm in our project now, looking at the schema file. And you can see we don't have the birth date or city field yet on user. So I'm going to run an Amplify pool. And we should see those fields get added since the backend has been updated through Studio. And you can see those fields have now been pulled in. And our backend is updated locally. Okay, switching back to Studio here on the Authentication tab. You can see I've already set up login authentication through email and password. And this is just saying, since it's been deployed, I can't update that now. What I would like to do is switch back to the data modeling tab and look at authorization rules per table. So I've clicked into the user table here, which opens up the authorization rules in the sidebar. And here we can configure different options for CRUD actions per user. So if we expand this, this is saying any signed in user can perform any CRUD action. And then down here at the bottom, we also have enable owner authorization checked, which just means the owner of that record can also perform any CRUD operation. And if we switch to the post table, we can see that any signed in user can either create or read post records, which just means users can create a new post or they can read any other post made by any user. And then on the owner authorization down here, we have update and delete, which just means the user that created the post can update that post or delete it. So we don't want the ability for any user to go and delete any other user's posts. Similar to adding fields and relationships, configuring the authorization rules to the visual editor also updates the underlying GraphQL schema. So you may have seen before, we have these auth rules on posts for allowing private to read and create, which are the logged in users through Cognito to be able to read and create any posts. And then owner specifies that the owner of the record can either update or delete. So this is the ability for users to delete their own posts or update an existing post that they have created. And I think this is one of the major benefits of using Studio, is automatically applying these rules. If you're new to Amplify, you may be unfamiliar with the syntax, so this helps you generate that syntax automatically. All right, switching gears here to some front-end configuration. I'm now on the UI library tab, and you can see down the side a long list of different components to choose from. And the way this works is Studio syncs with a Figma file to pull in all these components, which can then be used in your front end for your project. So if you click on here, you'll see that this is linked to a Figma file, and this is the example provided by Amplify. So if we switch to that, You can see all those different components in Figma here. And what I'm going to do is use this social post, and we'll make a change here to go see that reflected in Studio. So I switch back here and find that post. So this is mirroring that with some example data, and you can actually configure this to bind to fields in your GraphQL schema. So you can see if I click on here that this is currently bound to the title field. And so on, this is bound to the content field. And this is for the user table with the name. But what I want to do is make a quick change to the social post component and see that reflected in Studio. So what I'm going to do is make this date bold. Switch back to Studio. And then sync. So we get a little preview. So you can see it went from regular font to bold font, and we'll accept. Okay, and now you can see the bold font. So that's how you can configure components, but then we need to get them into our project. Okay, switching to our React project here, you can see this long list of components that we've pulled in from Studio, and it has automatically created React components that we can use in our project. But I've not yet pulled in those changes we made to the date by making it bold. So you can see here the font weight is currently at 400. And what I'm going to do is amplify pool, and we should see that update to make the font a little bit bolder. Once this pool goes through, it's going to recreate those components for us. So now you can see we're on the date field here, and it's updated the font weight to 700. So it should be nice and bold now. And I just have a very simple app here, not even loading data from a database, just have some hard-coded data. And I'm importing the social post from our UI components folder, and then binding the post in the user to that component just so that we can see it displayed on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and start up the app here so we can see that. And you can see it doesn't look exactly like that Figma post that we had seen. We might need a little more CSS to tweak that a bit. But you can see the example date here, which is now bold. We've got the title coming in from our sample record and the username, and then just some example content along with the other components that were in the social post component back here in Figma. So that's how you can use those components on the front end. And then a quick word on pricing. Amplify Studio is provided at no additional cost using Amplify. So like with Amplify, you're only paying for the underlying services that are used. So if you're deploying a data model through Studio and you're using DynamoDB and AppSync to provide the GraphQL API, then you're only paying for those services, not for using Studio itself. Okay, I think that about wraps it up for this one. If you found this video helpful, be sure to like and subscribe for more in the future on Amplify and AWS.